And we have two choices: to stand by and lose the gains that we made before marriage became legal in Massachusetts, or scramble to the new front line. This congregation has a vigilant scout on the front line. Roger Junk collects news on all the political battles going on and emails the information to about 20 of us. And I tell you, Roger gives you everything. And some days I say, I'm too busy to be a political activist, and other days I say, I'm going to send it to everyone that I can answer. But there needs to be more than 20 people on that email list. And we have a clipboard that we'll be passing around in the congregation for anybody who wants to be on that list. Because people get on email lists because, gee, I think this person might be interested in the issue. But I'm sure there are people that are not on the list who want to be, and maybe there are some people on the list who say, gosh, I've had enough, and we'll give you a rest too. But I hope more people will sign up to be on this list. But political is only one front. We need to talk about gays outside of the congregation. Some of our members cannot talk because if they outed themselves, they could lose their jobs. And that is why it is more important for the rest of us who have the freedom to talk. Because people hear so many horror stories about the homosexual agenda. Someone needs to be there as friend to friend, as a calm voice dispelling the myth. Someone needs to say, the gays and lesbians I know are not like that. The right speaks from hysteria. We can speak from experience, truthfully and reasonably. They speak from the stories they've been told. We can speak to reality. I think of my own transformation. As a child, my sister's friends found a box of photos of Jim, the local shoemaker, and some young boys. They were naked. This resulted in Jim being jailed. So in my town, we use the phrase Jim or shoemaker to refer to someone who was gay. And I talked to a friend of mine about 2 years ago, and he said, I mean, that's not the term all over the world? And his wife said, I always wondered why you used that word. Because it seemed fairly non-offensive to call someone Jim. But in my town, there was no distinction made between gay and pedophile. Jim was a totally different creature. And many people still get that issue confused. Some are even senators. But most of the victims of child sexual abuse are young girls molested by men. Always has been. But we do not hear the fear of straight men running rampant in our society. We must correct people whenever they say the mistaken notion that gay equals pedophile. In college, I remember being hesitant about the Equal Rights Amendment because of what a TV preacher said. He said, if we cannot discriminate on the basis of sex, homosexual lawyers will interpret sex as sexual behavior and legalize homosexuality. But it was also in college that I began to turn away from that fear. I took a sociology class in marriage and family from an elderly woman who said that gay couples were just a different type of family. We asked her about her family, and she mentioned that she had a roommate. It was years later when another alumnus told me, "Has Dr. Linder ever come out as a lesbian?" And I thought, oh, it makes sense to me now. And while I was in college, there was a man who called me and another young man we were both on the campus chapel council. And this man wanted to meet us and have sex. And so we were concerned and told the chaplain, and pacifist Charlie, around age 20, said, "Well, I suggest we could meet the guy and have several people just beat him up and turn him in." The chaplain talked us out of that and told us just to hang up on the phone when he calls, and the calls would stop. And they did. I'm surprised at the hostility in me. I look back and it seems like, who was that guy? Who was that guy? And so when you talk to somebody now that just doesn't seem to get it, I know my reaction is like, how can they be so stupid? But I gotta remember that I was once that stupid. And there was the potential in me to change. Well, things really changed for me when I moved to Chicago. I started playing at music clubs on the north side, and several of the clubs that held open mics were gay bars. And I was 22, about 100 pounds thinner. I was well received. I figured they must like my music because they were always buying me drinks. But after a while, I kind of learned what the deal was, and we were all just musicians, and we were friends. And I actually dated Margot, and she said, "This is strange because I'm a lesbian. I never thought I'd date a guy." And I said, "I'm a nice Christian boy. I never thought I'd be dating a lesbian." Margot moved to San Francisco shortly after we did a benefit concert for the family of Christopher Street, a folk singer who was the first person I knew that died of AIDS. And AIDS would also take another one of our gang, Larry. It seemed that just as gays were being a little more accepted by society, suddenly they were being blamed for this horrible disease. By that time, I was in seminary, and Richard, my roommate, came out as gay. Another one of our roommates, Bill, commuted to Chicago from Detroit and shared Rich's room, which was the biggest room in our apartment, for the 3 days a week when he was in town. Now, us full-time students were all in our 20s. Bill was a retired auto worker in his 50s, and we wondered how well he would take Rich coming out, especially since he'd been undressing in front of him for 2 or 3 months. But Bill took it surprisingly well, until one morning when I was eating breakfast with him, and he noticed a large pair of high heels under the table. Nervously, he asked, "Charlie, what are those?" And I said, "Oh, they belong to my friend Gail. We went out last night, and her high heels were hurting, and she's about the same size as me, so she wore my sneakers home." And you could just see him go, "Thank God. I have been so calm up to now, but that would have been too much." People learn at different rates. Different things make them uncomfortable. Even in this congregation, there are people who are uncomfortable. They might not like any public discussion of sex. They may respect your sexuality because they respect your right to privacy, and Just wish you'd be a little more private. But again, I still talk about gays. Even though it may bore some of our activists who have heard all the arguments before. But there are always new people coming into this congregation who need to hear our welcoming message. And we should not avoid a topic just because it might frighten somebody. Because I also talk about atheism. And I recently saw a poll, and I wish I could cite it, where more people were willing to vote for a gay president than an atheist president. So I will continue to talk about atheists until acceptance comes. We talk about gays because we believe that everybody has a right to be who they are. The affirmation of individual rights is basic to our tradition, and there is always room for growth. I'm sure there's another letter out there that can be added to GLBTQI. Each of us, gay or non-gay, can do something more. It may be as little as increasing your understanding. Some gays do not believe that bisexuals actually exist. I tell them, read the stories of bisexuals. Some hets might think this is all a bit strange. Seek the common humanity you share with others. Some activists are burnt out. Just listen to music and relax for a while. Some of us have been dormant, and it's time to join the struggle. It's all around. Myself, I am taking a step. I have been marrying gays and lesbians since 1992. And I've been doing heterosexual weddings for about the same amount of time. The difference is that when I do a traditional marriage, I act as an agent of the state, conferring privileges upon those who are of different genders. In the future, I will not do this. I will not act as an agent of the state that is unjust. And it's taken me 2 years to come to this position. There's all sorts of economic stuff, and my pledge was tied to the money I made from weddings, and so I had to make some adjustments. And I always kind of knew I would come to this point, but I had to wait till I was ready. It might not make a change, but I'm talking to other ministers and hoping that it might. Just as let fewer and fewer of us participate as agents of the state, then we will understand the difference between legal marriage and the true marriage. The true marriage is based in holiness, in love. So for today, I am done talking about gays. But I open up the floor to you, to anything that I may have missed, anything you might disagree with, anything that keeps the conversation going just a little longer.
I'm so proud that you decided to do this. I'm really proud of that. My daughter, you all may or may not know her, Devin. She likes to hang out with her buddies in the hood. She's a whole lot blacker than I am. And one of her friends saw Charlie on a TV thing about gay rights. At some point, they said, "Isn't that your dad?" And she said, "Yeah." And they said, "He does gay marriages?" And she said, "Yes." And she stood there toe to toe and talked to this person and explained to them why this was important. And I was like, if it can get through to a kid who likes to hang out in the hood.
I thank you and applaud you for what you've done. I think our position right because silence implies consent. If you're quiet, you're going along with what is happening. And this is not just a bad virus, it's a tsunami. And we have churches and we have politicians, even starting out at the school level, trying to get books in Alabama, trying to ban any book that has a gay character or is written by a gay author. This is legislation going through. We have they're trying to change schools.
Public schools.
Well, I mean, we need to get people who are willing to run for boards of education, but most importantly, we need to have people who are willing to speak. And it is incumbent upon gay people. We can't just wait for straight people to come help us. We've got to stand up for our own rights and not be victims.
And on the converse of that is that straight people need to speak up, because whenever a gay person speaks up for themselves, there's always, they can be written off as just being selfish after their own rights. They have to deserve it. But when straight people stand up and talk, then they can say, yes, this is real. It's that people who have the power have a responsibility to use the power.
Sure.
Also need to talk about my kids. For those of you who don't know, my daughter's 22, my son is 19. She's at Chapel Hill. She is continually dragging all of her friends to fellowship in Chapel Hill. Gays, straight, she just dragged them. Had a conversation with her dad, my ex-husband. I mentioned to him that she's dating a really nice guy, and he said, "What about Kate?" And I said, "Well, she was dating Kate, but they broke up." And he said, "Oh, well, do you think she's still confused?" And I said, "She was never confused. She always knew where she needed to be." The second thing I will tell you is that my 19-year-old son took a very delightful young lady to prom his senior year. She came out to him 6 weeks after the end of school. And the reason she came out to him, she said, is because she knew he would understand. And he did. And he said, "Oh, you really need to come talk to my sister, because she's fine too." The point of this is, we are still struggling at our age and our generation with these issues. Our younger generation, it's okay for them. They are dealing with it on a level that we don't even understand. Okay? And so the more we talk about it, the more we give them permission to be the next generation that comes up and takes this in stride, the better we're all going to be.
And to go along with that, I feel so fortunate that my kids are growing up with this fellowship, because it just doesn't occur to them that the fact that some of their friends have two moms is different. I mean, it just, they don't question that. It's just the way it is. Some kids have two moms, some kids have a mom and a dad. They haven't been exposed yet to two dads, but they will be, I'm sure. And, they just don't question it. And I'm so fortunate. I feel fortunate that that's the way they're growing up.
I just wanted to caution people not to get too secure in your beliefs that all of our kids growing up here are going to be comfortable all the time, because there's a lot of pressure out there. And my kids, although they've been hearing it since day one, still feel a little uncomfortable about it, still will use the words in a derogatory fashion. We fight this battle every day. So just don't get comfortable, even in your own house.
My first UU service was in Raleigh, and the conclusion of that first service was the same, that the church wouldn't act as a nation in the state, and that's why I'm Unitarian Universalist.
Please rise as you are able and join in hymn number 131, "Love Will Guide Us."
Jesus, would like to now have our offering, and Chelsea is going to present Tango by Jared Hengevelt.